This meeting is being recorded.
This is Karen with newclevelandradio.net, and it is time for Avoid the Maze. And if you listen or watch Avoid the Maze on YouTube, you will know that we follow the journey of our guests. And we're all on a journey. And the journey that we start out on may not be where we end up, because so many things change in our life. And I'm really excited to have Annie with us today, because one of the main things that Annie does is help us find that inner self. And you find it through fashion. Is that correct, Annie?
That's correct, Karen. Yeah.
So a lot of us tend to believe that if we open up a magazine and the magazine says the color this season is orange, we should be wearing orange. And yet we may not look good in it. Wearing it may make us feel powerless rather than powerful. And yet we do it because we think that's what we're supposed to do. So how are you changing that paradigm?
That's a great question. And thanks for asking it, Karen. I'm changing that paradigm because I'm shifting the focus from all these rules that we have been conditioned to follow, especially as women. Men have it too, but not so much. Women have been given a very complicated set of fashion rules to follow when it comes to how they show up. And all of it's very unproductive because we have this mindset that keeps us in a constant state of overwhelm and self-doubt and negative beliefs about ourselves.
You know, it's interesting because my mother was a seamstress, and she always knew what I looked best in. And I remember as a teenager, she made me some beautiful clothes, but they were never exactly the style I wanted or the color. Yeah. And you couldn't tell her, because if you told her, it'd be like, you're an ungrateful person. So I would wear these, outfits to school, and I can't tell you how many times it affected how well I did in class that day.
Yeah.
And I didn't understand it till I got older, and she wasn't sewing for me anymore. And when I would go out and choose an outfit, it'd be like, today I feel powerful. I'm going to wear that red outfit. And I'd walk into a meeting and I was powerful. Yeah. But if I was thinking about what my mother would want me to wear, which probably was turquoise or hot pink, I didn't do so well. So there is a science behind all this, isn't there?
Yeah. And I'm not a scientific person. But I totally resonate with what you say. Actually, I approach it from more of a spiritual angle, but to touch on what you said, and to really reinforce it, I had the same experience. My mom was also a seamstress, and she was from the old country, so she could take apart, for instance, an old, like a gentleman's coat.
Sure.
And, she remade outfits for me. And so as a 7-year-old, I'm wearing, houndstooth check, complete full-on outfit, and looking, longingly at the girls that were wearing lilacs and pinks and frills and lace, and thinking, why do I look like a man? Why are they calling me Sherlock Holmes? And yeah, it totally affected the way that I performed as well. It took away my self-confidence because other people were, making fun of the way that I looked.
So what made you decide to go into this field? Because, usually there's something that in our lifetime that says, hey, this is what I want to do. And this is not a common field. At least I'm not aware of it. If it is, boy, I should have found somebody like you years ago.
I guess it's not a common field, especially now. We're all wearing pajamas and
Right.
loungewear in the pandemic and thinking, what's the point? But back to your question about what made me get into this, I think the seeds were always there, Karen. I remember as a 12-year-old, this is well past the age of playing with Barbies, I was so compelled to create outfits and create beautiful clothes that I made them myself for my Barbie dolls, crocheted them without a pattern, and just was so into, making things for my Barbies. And, you know, we're also conditioned to think of careers in different ways. So I bypassed the whole stylist thing because A, it wasn't a thing when I was growing up,
Right.
and B, all of this other cultural conditioning played into it that kept me from even looking at being a stylist. And one of those factors was religion. Being from a deeply religious home, style was something that was not spiritual, and if you were going to dress in clothes, it was only for how do I say this? It was utilitarian, and you had to follow another set of rules. Don't wear your skirts too short, don't be too revealing. So all these factors played into me really putting off what was so obvious, that I had this gift of, styling and really helping women to express that self. So it came out really in a life and death moment. And that's when I was diagnosed with stage 3C, stage 4 incurable cancer. And it's funny, it's in those moments where you have nothing left to lose except for your life. And I started to dress like my life depended on it, because I knew instinctively that to express myself was something that I needed to do. I had these really big dreams for my life, and I resolved that, well, it's funny, the people that make it through a cancer diagnosis, a life and death cancer diagnosis, those are the people that determine, no, I'm going to live.
Exactly.
Regardless of what a doctor says to me, no, I'm going to live. So that was me. I determined I'm going to live. And beyond that, I'm going to live my dreams. This is my moment. And in order to claim that, I knew that wearing, clothes that people wear typically when they're sick wasn't going to cut it for me. That was just going to make me feel like I was sick, like I was dying, like I was a cancer patient. So I started to think about, well, what does my successful self look like? What does my fully embodied highest potential look like? How does she want to show up? And that's what got me to stop thinking about my religion or the fashion industry, because I was almost 50 by that time. And there's a whole other set of rules that
Right.
play into how you show up when you're turning 50. Then it's all of a sudden you got to wear turtlenecks and you know what I mean? You can't do anything flashy. So the surprising thing is, it was a pair of skin tight sequin pants that 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 I when I put them on, I felt like I was wearing a superhero cape. And I
Interesting.
started to wear them around town, just running errands, getting my mail, for instance. And what people reflected back to me was telling me that I was on the right track, because they started to reflect back to me that, well, first, they would stop me on the street. They just had to. And they would just comment on, I just have to say, you look like the picture of health, like a million bucks. And then I would just get such a thrill by saying, I don't know if you can tell. I just had my second round of chemo the other day, and then they would just be like, you know, total shock.
Sure.
And that's when I knew, they could see the different persona. They weren't seeing the cancer patient that, according to a doctor, was almost dying. They saw a picture of health. And so that was one turning point. The other turning point has been really uncovering my own beliefs around how I show up. And that was a turning point where I realized that a very pivotal moment in my development at the age of 14, it was around a sexual trauma, and the comments that man made who assaulted me sexually. He said to me, well, what did you think? You showed up wearing, like I was wearing a one-piece bathing suit and a pair of shorts. It was just an innocent invitation to play tennis with like, I had no idea. I had no idea about the so-called facts of life. And this completely blindsided me. But that really played a factor in my sense of unworthiness, and especially around my body.
And, and those comments continue to surface. I heard that growing up as well. And I remember my grandfather was over one day, and I was wearing, I probably was 14 or 15 years old myself, and I was wearing a sweater, and I was just starting to develop. And in 14 years old, when all of a sudden you're starting to develop, either you're very proud of it or you're shy of it. Well, I was proud because, my mother thought I was going to be flat chested my whole life. So it was like, look at me. And I remember my mother pulling me away from my grandfather. Not that he was doing anything sexual, but he was holding my hand. My grandfather always held my hand. But the fact that I was wearing this sweater and I was holding myself in such a way, she was afraid that maybe, and she never said it back then, but I realize it now, that maybe I might be exciting him and it was inappropriate. And I remember her pulling me away, and she said, you have to be very careful what you wear around men.
Wow.
And I didn't ask for an explanation, but I kept hearing it my whole life. And especially when I went through a divorce in my late 20s, I remember I had girlfriends who said, if you wear that outfit out, all you're going to get is a guy who wants to get laid. And I looked at them and I thought, well, no, I wasn't wearing really low cut, sexy clothes, but to them, they were my so-called married friends. I was now the divorcee, and everybody had that judgment call. And that is sad because, just because you're wearing something sexy doesn't necessarily say, hey, I'm ready to have sex. What you're saying is, I appreciate the way I look.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. And that's just so sad. It just goes to highlight the fact that these beliefs have been so indoctrinated. They go back generations, for one thing.
Right.
And what I have found to be true, especially as I work with women who have these issues, that, by the way, they don't even realize that they have these issues. They're so deeply ingrained, as it was for me. It took me most of my life to uncover this belief that I had around that sexual assault.
Sure.
So what I have found to be true, sorry, I lost my train of thought here, because it's just so profound when you think about it, just the impact that has. Oh, I know what I was going to say. What I have found to be true is, once once I start working with these women and they begin to, first of all, look at themselves, how they show up as, okay, I'm deciding that I'm going to be very intentional. I'm going to show up as my best self, my highest potential for myself as a woman leader, and what kind of impact I want to make in the world. And then a lot of times they might have aspects of their style that, might seem very, I'm still holding myself back
Yeah.
because of the words that we use. So if I could just be raw, they have aspects of their style that might seem really sexy to somebody, but it's the energy that you embody when you wear that clothing. And when you start off with the intention that this is me at my highest and best, and my energy is now that people people around me, they will treat me as my highest and best self. They will hold me in the highest regard because I have the highest and best regard for myself. I value my body. I value my potential. I value my worth. And that's reflected in how people treat you. But if you still have this unlocked subconscious patterning around the victimhood stuff, unfortunately, and I know this to be true even for myself, you will hear those messages repeated to you until you begin to shift it. So it's just a very, very subtle distinction, isn't it?
Yes.
Because it almost sounds as though I'm saying, well, if you dress that way, you're asking for it. But it really doesn't have anything to do with how you dress, because you could wear a bikini walking down the streets and you won't get the same treatment if you hold that high regard within your energetic field.
So what I'm finding very interesting about this whole discussion is that on many of our shows, we've been talking recently, and I think it's because of the pandemic and being so much alone, we keep hearing these voices. And in the past, we wouldn't have talked about it in that manner because people would have said, oh, if you're hearing voices, you're crazy. But the reality of it is, it's the messages that we've gotten our whole life, and they bombard us all day long, even when we're not listening to them. And I know as a very young little girl, I have two older brothers. So when I was born, my mother just wanted to dress me like a doll. And because she was a seamstress, she made pinafores and dresses. And, at 5 years old, when I wanted to put on a pair of pants, she was almost appalled because she loved putting me in all the frill. And I love the frill. But it's interesting, once I started to change, she eventually got with the times too. Okay, so you're going to wear pants. And I remember for my first marriage, I said that I wanted to wear pants. I wanted a pant gown. And that was back in the early 70s when leisure suits and flare pants were in. And my mother looked at me and she said, please, for your wedding, no. If you want it for going away outfit, you want it for a wedding shower, yes, I'll make that for you. But I just want you to wear a dress. And I'm so glad she convinced me of that, because I probably would have looked back and said, that was a fashion statement I was trying to make, not necessarily who I was. But those voices keep coming back. And when we can express them to someone like you and tell you what's really bothering us, okay, or what it is that we think we want to present ourselves as, sometimes we don't see that in the magazines or online shopping, or we look at certain things and how is that going to go together? And what does that mean for me? So if I were to come to you and say, you know, I know I'm 71 years old, but I don't want to portray being 71. I want to be taken seriously. And I love wearing, you know, legging pants and tops.
Yeah.
Can you make me, you know, feel good about myself and others look at me as if I'm just as important as somebody who's wearing a two-piece suit and high heels?
Well, first, Karen, 71.
71, almost
I can't
72.
believe it. You just look amazing.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's unbelievable. I would have pegged you for, anyways, late 40s, early 50s. So
And I
well done.
and I will tell you that's one of the things that we talk about here on New Cleveland, that it is not about our ages, because like
No.
yourself, we've changed our pathway, our journey, what we may have thought it was when we were growing up. I probably thought when I was young that when I hit 71, 72, you know, I'd be like my grandmother and, you know, I'd be shuffling around the house. But my role model, my mother, didn't even do that. Okay.
Yeah.
And so, and then I look around and it's like, I don't need to act old. Okay. But I
Yeah.
certainly don't want to act like a teenager. So there's something in between that makes
Yeah.
me who I am, no matter if I'm 71 or 17.
Yeah.
So, you know, can I wear the clothes that I want to?
Well, to go back to your question, what I would do is I would first start to work with you around relinquishing your old self. And that's, you know, all the habits, patterns, thoughts, beliefs that you have about yourself, because that's just an accumulation, really, an identity, really. That's an accumulation of all of that stuff from your past.
Okay.
So really helping you to get clear on what is your next level potential. What does that woman look like? What's the impact you want to have? What's the impact you want to have, especially in your business, and what does that look like? So what I have found to be true is once women get clear on that vision, then the rest of the parts become easy. But there's also a middle factor that's really, really important, and that is relinquishing those old beliefs. And a lot of it comes from the fashion industry, and how you know that you're stuck in those beliefs is you keep asking yourself the same questions. How do I look? How does this make me look? Is this flattering? Am I too old to wear this? Am I too young to wear this? You know, you keep asking these unproductive questions. And then the next factor is to really relinquish your old style, because your old style, unless you've done the first two things, you keep defaulting to the same stuff. You keep having this pattern of showing up in the same way. That's why, you know, the fashion industry has conditioned us to think that, oh, we can just go to the mall, buy a new dress, and boom, we've got the self-confidence and that new persona that we're looking for. But it's not that easy. It's really highly intentional. So those three things: relinquish your old self, relinquish your old beliefs, and relinquish your old style. And then you'll be open to something completely new. And I can't say what that is for you, Karen, because it's really bringing what's on the inside on the outside. It's more of it's a deeply spiritual transformation that really begins to shift every single area of your life, so that you begin to show up in a brand new way in everything you do. So it's bringing out your authentic self, where you're not afraid anymore, and you're standing on that rock and going, "This is me."
Yep.
Unapologetic. Doesn't matter what my husband or my boyfriend or my mother or my sister or my girlfriends or the people in the town think of me.
You know, I love this conversation because this past Thanksgiving we went up to upstate New York to be with my brother and sister-in-law and his adult daughter and kids. And My sister-in-law, I'm not going to say she's overly fashionable, but she's got the cutest petite little body and everything really looks good on her. And I'm the total opposite of her, at least in my mind. But this was the first time when I was packing to go up there. I packed outfits that made me feel good. It had nothing to do with what anybody else would be wearing. It's like, I know if I wear this when we go here, I'm going to feel good enough. And it's the first time I truly ever was that into what I was doing. Typically, I would have packed mostly black and white outfits, so I would have fit into anything. But I didn't always feel comfortable doing that. And my sister-in-law even made the comment to me on Thanksgiving night that I was more vibrant this time with everybody. And I acknowledged it. I said, yeah, I know, because I didn't conform. I didn't stop and say, yeah, they're going to be wearing jeans and sweatshirts, so I should be doing that. No, this is what I wanted to wear. And I think a lot of that has come due to being sort of isolated during the pandemic, doing almost everything on Zoom. I'm very aware of everything, and I dress from top to bottom. I'm unlike some podcasters that are pajama bottoms or no bottoms and just a top. But I make an effort every day because this is my office, this is my business. And I enjoy it. The few days that I'm not totally prepared, I can't converse as well with my guests. It's an interesting situation because you would think, well, the clothes aren't talking, but in some ways they are.
It's like those clothes take you to the edge of your potential. It's really what I call an ascended style, which is why I call myself the Ascension Stylist. And I can so relate to what you just said because as of not too recently, having uncovered those beliefs about myself around that sexual trauma, I was in a pattern where my energy was really low. And, you know, as you're shifting these things, your body is going through emotional stuff. So yeah, I couldn't be bothered to get dressed, but at the same time, I tried to put myself out there on networking events and podcasts, and I just couldn't show up in the same way. It was like there was a part of me that was greatly diminished, and I was not being my authentic self. Although one could say, you know, this is my authentic, not feeling up to par self. But I'm not being my sparkly self. I'm not being my highest and best self.
So when you started wearing this flashy outfit, when you were going through your treatment, I love it because I have a very good friend who does a podcast with us, and she basically did the same thing. She dressed to go to chemotherapy.
Cool.
And as she said, she had just become a single parent at that time. So not only was she getting dressed to go to chemotherapy, she was getting dressed to go to her kids' school events. She was still working. And she said that if she didn't make herself look good in her eyes, she said everybody else may not have liked what she was wearing, but it didn't matter. If she felt good going into chemotherapy, she said she handled the chemotherapy much better. It wasn't that she didn't get sick, but okay, so she took it more with a grain of salt. And she's been my rock over the last couple of weeks as I've been going through some medical things. And she said, when you go in for your appointment, she said, you're dressed from head to toe. She said, and if you could have a different face mask for every outfit, you probably would. And I said, you're right. Because I don't want to go in anywhere looking sick. If I'm sick, I'm sick,
Yeah.
but I don't have to really look it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's counterproductive, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because your body then starts to behave as though you're in this holding pattern of being unwell, right? And then you
Absolutely.
spend more time in bed, you walk slower, you don't have the energy, you know?
So, your journey through cancer, tell us where you are.
Oh, wow. That was 2013. It's now 2022. So what is that? 9 years?
It is wonderful.
Yeah.
Absolutely wonderful. And none
Yeah.
of us can predict. Again, going back into our youth, you had certain ideas of how your life, how you wanted it to go. Of course, none of us wish for any kind of illness. But when those things happen, if we are being true to ourselves, we find a way to push and live through it.
Yeah.
We all know, as my father would remind me my whole life, honey, someday you're going to die, but today you're alive.
Yeah.
Live today. And on the few days of my life that I backed off of wanting to live, wanting to wallow in that pity, I realized halfway through that day, I've just lost some good time.
Yeah.
Am I losing the good time? My father's right. I don't know when I'm going to die. So why aren't I wearing something fabulous? Why aren't I doing something that I enjoy? Why
Yeah.
why aren't I out there with other women and supporting women today?
Yeah. So true. So true. And yeah, life's too short to, like, we're literally clothing ourselves in low vibe, low energy, this feeling like we could sit in front of the TV all day and watch Netflix and eat from a bag of chips. That's the energy,
Right.
the intention that we're putting on. It's sleepwear, it's clothes that don't push you out of your comfort zone. But when you show up with that intention, right from the start, getting dressed is one of the most important decisions you'll make all day. And I can give you an example of that with a woman that I just worked with, and she had big dreams too. She wanted to launch herself with a team to help her really up level her marketing and her sales skills, because she wanted to launch a fashion brand later this year. And it's really a wonderful example, because these opportunities will find you when you start putting that energy out there. So she had been scouted by this 7-figure company, and they wanted her to work for her, and she thought it was a scam, so she blocked them. But blocked them all on Facebook, on all the channels, Instagram, everything. And they found her. They somehow found her and reached out to her and said, this company really wants to hire you. It's another 7-figure company. So she was open to it just because it felt like a divine thing. And first month that she was hired, she didn't know much about sales or anything, but she doubled their projection, their sales projection. She made the company December the best month they've ever had all year. December
How
is typically
wonderful.
their worst. And she was nicknamed the Crusher by the CEO of the company. And that's all because she shows up dressing as her best self. And so we think that style is so superficial. It's not. It really has a huge impact on how you show up.
I'm going to give you an example of something, and I'm hoping our listeners, really understand this. On the weekends, I'm an IT support trainer in a big box store for electronics. And it's
Wow.
my job to go in and work with the department, make sure that their sales skills are appropriate, that they know at least enough about the product so that they're not giving false information. And they don't, most of them wear khakis in their t-shirts. I have a number of different t-shirts with my company, the company logo on it. But I try to add a little sparkle to what I'm wearing. And I do that with shoes more than anything else. And yesterday I was wearing these red, really comfy shoes. They're a combination of like a tennis shoe and a boot. And customers and employees were being attracted to me because of my shoes. And I was in my realm. It wasn't them telling me so much they like my shoes, okay? But once they engaged, I could engage more with them. The more we engaged, the better our sales were and in the training. And I left that store. I have 2 stores on Sunday that I work at. And when I went to the second store, everybody was very oblivious. The Browns football game was on, so there weren't many customers in the store. Everybody had their phone up to their ear listening to the game. And my energy level totally went to the ground. But then a customer did walk in, and where I was standing, the first thing she said was, "I love those shoes. Where did you get those shoes?" And then we started talking about fashion, nothing about what I was there for. But my energy level went up, and I actually ended up working overtime yesterday. So I know this all plays a part. I felt very comfortable in my skin, and also it being noticed makes a difference. So if you're out there listening, a lot of us are wearing, uniforms if you're waitressing or even doing customer service. And sometimes we feel like we blend in, but sometimes it just takes a little tweak, different set of earrings, a bracelet, your shoes, whatever you can do to say, hey, this helps me be a little bit more vibrant.
100%. I love that, Karen.
So how do your clients find you?
That's a good question. So my website is www.theascensionstylist.com. And I'm also going to do a webinar soon on the 3 key shifts to unlocking your highest potential through style. So you can email me if that interests you. My email is, I have to change this, by the way, but my email, because I used to be the Reinvention Stylist. So that email is Annie@thereinventionstylist.com.
Okay. Well, we'll put all that in the show notes. So those of you listening, you didn't have to memorize any of this. You can go back into the show notes and check it out. And as I suggested to Annie before we went on air, we have a couple of other podcasts here at New Cleveland Radio that I know you'd be a welcome guest. Maybe we can get into a little bit more depth about, some of the questions that, you would be asking your client, or the questions your clients come and ask you, because, when you listen to a podcast like this, sometimes you think, that's really not for me. But then you listen to it a second time, or you hear it, with a different host, and you go, you know what? Maybe I do need to make some changes. And the last 4 years have been huge changes for me. I've worked with numerous coaches, and I've realized that, if we stay stagnant, we don't grow, obviously. And just that little nudge that says, maybe you could do something different. And if you don't want to, that's your choice.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me on the show, Karen.
Well, it's been wonderful. And thank you putting up with some of the changes we've had to make over the last couple of weeks. I want everybody to know that Annie just like rolled with the punches. It's been strange here at New Cleveland Radio. We expanded a lot faster in the last 2 months than we had planned. And I thought I was Superwoman, and I probably should have been wearing your outfit so I could have had a cape and everything. But it was in the last 2 weeks that I finally realized, whoa, you got to pull those reins back just a little bit. So make the changes that you need to make for yourself. Don't make them for anybody else. Make them for you, correct?
100%.
Wonderful. You have a great day, and we'll be in touch real soon, okay?
Okay.
Thank you, Annie.
You have a great day too. Bye.
Bye.